مشاهدينا الكرام، أهلا ومرحبا بكم. تعقد شركة إنفر الأمريكية عقود استحواذ بقيمة 100 مليون دولار على شركتين مصريتين في قطاع التكنولوجيا والمعلومات. ولمزيد من التفاصيل حول هذا الموضوع بيشرفني أن ألتقي الآن بالسيد طارق التمان، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة إنفر. Welcome on EXtraNews.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. First, I'd like to ask you about your name. It sounds like Egyptian. Are you Egyptian?
I am 100% Egyptian. أنا مولود برا وعشت طول عمري برا، بس الحمد لله أنا لسه بعرف شوية عربي. I'll have to speak to you mostly in English, but please know أنا 100% مصري.
Thank you so much and welcome in Egypt.
Thank you.
You're loyal and you get back to Egypt.
Absolutely. My mother and father brought us here every 2 years growing up. I'd go to my father's village that he grew up in Munafaya to visit all of my grandparents and extended relatives. And Egypt is my mother's home. So ultimately, it's my homeland.
Sounds interesting. First, in the first of our interview, I would like to know your vision and your point of view about the current economical state in the Egyptian scene.
Yeah, well, the last 4 years, as everyone knows, has been difficult for Egypt, but Egyptians are very resilient and the Egyptian economy is very resilient. Even through all of the challenges that Egypt's been having, the GDP growth is better than most Western countries at around 3%, and it continues to produce very talented young people through its excellent education system. So I think things are getting better. I think President Sisi is doing a fantastic job bringing together stability, and with recent changes in macroeconomic changes, I think there'll be more and more foreign investment and more exports from this country to the rest of the world.
What are the Americans' businessmen' point of view about the current economical state in Egypt?
With the recent floating of the Egyptian currency, goods produced in Egypt are very economical, and there's a strategic advantage. And those goods are not just products such as clothing or things that are manufacturing, but it's intellectual property, such as engineering talent, such as software programming talent. And so now it's very attractive for Western companies, American companies, to consider moving into Egypt, building talent pools that can service not only the growth in the region, but the growth around the world.
Do you think that the economical reforms that have been implemented in Egypt recently would attract and help the American investor to come and invest in Egypt?
I think so. Ultimately, I studied economics, and I know that it's painful for people to lose their subsidies for petrol, for bread, for other kinds of basic subsidies. But without moving to much more of an open capitalistic market and a floating market, the economy is going to have a difficult time sustaining growth. And so with the World Bank showing its confidence by producing a very large loan to Egypt, which will help fuel the stimulus that it takes to start bringing Egyptian growth into maybe high single digits, if we're lucky, double digits. It can be done. You can see there are examples in the rest of the world. India, while the rest of the world was going through financial crisis, was still growing 8 to 10%. And so Egypt has a lot of the same ingredients that India does. And so with some good stewardship, I think companies like mine and other companies will start coming to Egypt and fueling the growth that is so needed to help with youth unemployment in particular. We all know that youth in Egypt between 17 and 30 years old are having a hard time finding jobs, and this is our talent and this is our future. Without making them productive, we don't have a strong future, and so we have to do everything we can to take our youth and get them to work.
Okay, now let's jump to the flotation of the currency. What do you think and how do you find the decision of the central bank about the flotation of the currency? And do you think that this decision would help and encourage the American investor to come and invest in Egypt?
I do. It's a brave decision, but it absolutely needed to be done. If you look at even over the course of the last 90 to 120 days, I think the pound at one point went to 20, and it's gaining 3 or 4 percentage back in strength in an open market. That shows confidence that the economy and the people of Egypt will and can produce and be productive and competitive in their own right. And so with Egypt floating the currency, it means that It's very, as I mentioned before, very attractive to hire people, and now even we can hire top engineers in this country for less than the cost of hiring in India, and they're more loyal, and they've got that sense of resilience and hard work that you don't find in every culture. Eastern Europe used to be a place to nearshore, offshoring capabilities around engineering or other industries, and now again, if we have stability and safety in the region, I think that will drive more and more companies to continue to come to Egypt, take advantage of the power of the people and the power of the talent of young people for their own purposes, as to grow their businesses. Because after all, this is all about growing their business while contributing to the societies that companies like ours are part of.
Did you follow the recent economic reports that have been issued from the International Financial Institution that emphasize that there is promising investment chances in Egypt?
That I have. I read most of the financial magazines and newspapers on a daily basis, and even while some of the ratings agencies are make their conclusions on sort of the economic stability and the ability of the federal Egyptian government to pay back debts and etc. There's still a lot of positive press out there. There's a lot of companies and institutions that are saying that Egypt's open for business. I'm guessing just this week in Switzerland at Davos, members of the Egyptian community are hanging out their shingles saying Egypt's open for business. Please come on in.
How do you find the decision of the Fitch's institution about grading Egypt to level B?
We all saw through the financial crisis that grading institutions, even grading national debt, it's not a perfect science. And I think there are other agencies such as that still have a more positive outlook of Egyptians' creditworthiness. But these things happen, and Egypt is collecting debt, so to speak. But it's necessary during times of stimulus to collect that debt. It may affect the ratings a little bit, but it's a good move.
Okay, and now let's jump to the Infer and your investment. First, what encouraged you to do this investment?
Well, Infor is the third largest software company in the world. We're about 15,000 people altogether. We have about $3 billion worth of total revenue or turnover, and we're one of the fastest growing technology companies in the world. We've spent the last 6 years growing from tripling in size and going from a valuation of less than about $1 billion to almost $11 billion. And so as we've been changing our industry of business systems and business software, we consider ourselves the iPhone of business software, which is the landscape is changing. Even the paradigm of how people use business systems is changing, not only in mobile use, but how pretty software is, how smart it is, and how it helps businesses drive efficiency and profitability. So with that said, I was moved here from headquarters just recently, about a year ago, and as I mentioned before, I'm an Arab American, but the first time I've lived in the Middle East, really, to Dubai, and it's been my mission to take India, Middle East, and Africa and raise our market share to the level that we have in the rest of the world. And part of that is to make sure that we can take the cost advantage and skills advantage we have in India, Middle East, and Africa, and be able to service the rest of our company in the rest of the world. And so in Manila, we have a Center of Excellence or support organization that's about 1,200 people. In India, we have one that's about 2,000 people. And as I suggested to the rest of the management team, maybe now's a good time for us, for all those economic things we just talked about, for us to consider opening up one in Egypt. We're considering buying some small companies, and we're considering also opening up a center of excellence in order to take advantage of the skills that we have here and drive global growth for our company while supporting our own ambitions in the region itself.
Okay, I want to clarify to the people the natural business of Infer. It is specialized in doing business application for the big institutions and so on. Would you clarify for me
Yes.
the nature of the business?
Yes, absolutely. So we build the software that when you check into a hotel, makes sure it knows your name, what room you're going to be staying in, what you order from room service, looking after your and food that you any special needs you have. We build the software that runs hospitals, so electronic medical record, what the doctors and nurses use when they look after you as a patient. We build the software that runs manufacturers. See, we run Boeing and Ferrari. Every Ferrari in the world is built from our manufacturing software. We build software for governments. So we look at, what's different about us than most of our competition is we build software for very specific businesses or sectors and verticals, as opposed to sort of generic software that we expect customers to figure out how to make work for them. And that's one of the reasons why our growth is driving and is so fast compared to others, and one of the reasons why we have such confidence over time we're going to become the market share leader.
This is brilliant. In which countries of the Middle East the Infer company is existing, would you tell me?
So I've recently opened up offices in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia. We bought a company in Tunisia, and we have a small office in South Africa. So if and when we open up in Egypt, which inshallah we will in the near future here, Egypt will be our fourth Arab country and our fifth Middle Eastern country, all together. And so our fourth Arab country and fifth country in Middle East Africa itself. And so over time we will be growing into more and more countries, and we expect to do very well in the Middle East moving forward.
How do you find, and what is your evaluation about the sector of technology in Egypt nowadays?
It's interesting. Over the last 10 years or so, more and more global technology companies are opening up in Sitta October and Smart Village and other places around Egypt. I've talked to a lot of general managers and executives with firms that are my counterparts. They've had great progress. They feel like their people stay in the same place without a lot of employee turnover, and they feel like the talent is excellent. And so, to me, Egypt, it makes a lot of sense, for us to grow here. I believe in both the culture and the work ethic of Egyptians, and we have 3 million university students graduating, every 4 years at this point, growing dramatically. And so, almost a quarter of them are engineers or technologists. This is talent that we need to take advantage of.
What about the expected size of investment that will be pumped in the Egyptian market?
It's a little bit to be determined. We are meeting with different government agencies. We are asking for some help and some direction, and and what kind of incentives that they can provide us moving forward. If inshallah,
there is intentions.
There is intentions, and there's looks like there's going to be quite a bit of help from the government agencies as well. But it could, as I mentioned, we have some 2,000 people in India. You never know, maybe Egypt can become that big one day. Okay.
And what about your intention for more investment in the Middle East in general? Is there any intentions for this investment?
There are. Over time, I expect to have small to large offices in most Middle East countries. I will be opening up something in Kuwait, something in Qatar, something in Bahrain, Oman, and across North Africa. I'm not sure how long it'll take us to be everywhere, but as a company, we have offices in 100 of 200 countries around the world, and many of the countries we need to grow to are in my patch, and so that's my job to do exactly that.
Mr. طارق Taman, thank you so much for your time and for your interview. This seems so optimistic and so encouraging. Thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure, and it's good to be back in Egypt.
إذا مشاهدينا الكرام، كان هذا لقاءنا مع السيد طارق تمان الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة إنفر الأمريكية. بشكر لكم طيب المتابعة وإلى اللقاء.